that are physical in nature. They are classified into some that are based on chemical in nature, and some that are based on combination of the physical and the chemical methods. The physical methods include the one that the male condom, then the female condom, then the diaphragm, and also the vaginal sponge. Now, this is the male condom. It's the most widely used barrier device by males worldwide. It prevents semen from being deposited in the female genital tract. It provides protection against pregnancy and sexually transmitted disease. Disadvantage is that it can slip off during intercourse, and it can even tear during intercourse, and then the pregnancy can if you're having intercourse and then you're having now greater sensation than usual, and you are using male condom, you have to quickly check whether the condom has ruptured, and you are now having direct skin-to-skin contact. So those are one of the things that you have to take care of when you are using the male condom. Also, there is another condom that's also developed, which is the female condom. The male condom is worn by the male, the female condom is put on by the female. So the female condom is a pouch made of polyurethane which lines the female genital tract. It has an internal ring at the close end of the pouch which covers the cervix, and the external ring which remains outside the female genital tract. The disadvantage of the male condom is that it is more expensive than the male condom, and also not many females accept it. That's the problem with it. Then you also have another parameter, what is known as the diaphragm, or sometimes they call it the Dutch cap, or sometimes they call it the cervical cap. This is a female genital tract barrier method. It's a shallow cup. It looks like a cup made of synthetic rubber or plastic material. It is inserted just before intercourse and must remain in place for not less than 6 hours after intercourse. Then the spermicide, that is a chemical substance that kills sperm, okay, is always used along with the diaphragm. So if the woman is using diaphragm, she also has to apply spermicide on it, so that when there is intercourse, apart from the sperm not having entrance into the uterus and the fallopian tube, the spermicide will also kill the sperm. But as with other methods, it also has failure rate. Then we have what is known as the vaginal sponge. This is one of the oldest methods that have been used even before the IUD and other methods came up. The modern sponge is made of small polyurethane foam sponge saturated with spermicide, and they put chemical that can kill sperms inside it. It is less effective than the diaphragm, but it's better than nothing. So this is also one of the barrier methods that the females use before intercourse. Then the chemical methods are basically the spermicides, which are used before the advent of IUDs and other contraceptives. They are classified into 4 categories. We have some that are in form of foams. It can be a foam tablet, that it can be in form of a tablet, but when it is inserted in the genital tract, it is now form a foam. It can be in form of aerosols. Then it can also be in form of clean jellies and paste, like toothpaste, which is squeezed from the tube. It can be in form of a suppository, which is like a tablet that you just insert manually into the genital tract. It can be in form of a solution fix, like chemical fix inserted manually. Is the commonly used modern spermicide the surface active agents which attach themselves to spermatozoa and inhibit oxygen uptake and kill the sperms. Must be used immediately before intercourse and repeated before each intercourse. Disadvantage is that they might cause mild burning or irritation besides being messy when they are used. Then you also have what is known as the intrauterine devices. There are two basic types, the non-medicated and then the medicated ones. There are various forms of it. There are some that are called this blue. There is copper 7, there is copper T, there is multi-blue, there is progestin, there is progesterone. The one that is progestin is the copper T. You can see it's form of a T. Okay? So there are some other forms of the intrauterine devices. So these are put inside the uterus. It's impair viability of the garment and thus reduce the chances of fertilization rather than implantation. So what it does is that those of them that are medicated, they act on the sperm so that the ability to be able to fertilize the ovum is reduced. Before it was thought that what they do is that after fertilization, they prevent the fertilizer from now attaching to the uterus. But now some scientists say no, that's not what it does. What it does is that it prevents that fertilization from taking place. This is important because this is one of the reasons why some scholars kick against the use of IUD, because of the fact that what IUD does is to prevent implantation. That is, the egg is already fertilized by the sperm and it does not allow the fertilizer to now implant on the uterus. The side effects of IUD is that once you put it on, you are likely to be having more bleeding than usual. Then you are likely to be having more pain. Then also repeated pelvic infection. You are likely to be having infection, the females. You have infection this month, you treat it. Next month again, there's infection, you treat it. Next month again, there's infection, you can even migrate up. Then you can, if there is failure, because of the fact that when you use it can fail, even with the IUD inside. So it can usually result in abortion. Also, it can cause ectopic pregnancy. That's when the pregnancy now occurs where it should not be. The pregnancy normally is supposed to be in the uterus cavity. But it can now, because of the fact that there is IUD there, so after fertilization in the fallopian tube, when the fertilized egg is now coming back, because there is something in the uterus, it should now have space according to the uterus to now implant in the fallopian tube, which now results in ectopic pregnancy. And the ectopic pregnancy sometimes, or usually, it will burst. When it bursts, the woman will start bleeding internally. And if it's not diagnosed in time, then it will lead to death. And then sometimes it can also lead to expulsion. The IUD itself can come out on its own. There are cases when, however, with the IUD is the woman gets pregnant and she never delivers, and when the baby is coming out, it will now hold the IUD. Then we also have what is known as the hormonal contraceptives. The hormonal contraceptives may be classified into two groups. We have the pills, the oral pills, then we have the depot or slow release formulations. The pills can be in the form of combined. The one by combined pills, that is combined estrogen and progesterone together, or it can be only progesterone, only pill. Then there are also pills which is called postpartum pill or emergency contraceptive. That is, you are not on the pill before you have intercourse. Oh, then they use the pill so that I don't get pregnant. Then you also, the pill is usually used daily. But there are some long-acting pill which is called a month pill. And scientists are now trying to develop a pill also. Then we have the depot slow release formulation, like injectables, so that you just take the injections in a month. And then you go back and maybe another 1 month or 2 months. Then you have what is known as the subcutaneous implants. These are some material that are inserted under the skin. And then the skin is cut open, they put it there, sew it back, and it's there. And may be there for the next 5 years. I don't need to take anything and you don't get pregnant. Then you also have what is known as the vaginal rings, which are put in the female genital tract, and it just remain there. It will be releasing hormones Hormones are things that we act on the body system so that it's either prevent you from producing egg or prevent the egg from being fertilized. So these are some of the pills that you can have. This is a plan B pill, this is an emergency pill, that's what we call the plan B. That is, in case you now discover that you cannot see your period, what do you do? Then you take it. Then this is some pregnancy implant that is put under the skin. Okay, about 3 or 4 of them like that. They cut the skin and put it there and then sew it back. So, and then this is the vaginal ring. And then you also have the patch to just on the skin. And then the hormones from inside the patch will be entering to your body system and be acting on the cell so that you will not be able to ovulate. Now, you also have the post-conceptional methods, which is termination of pregnancy. That is, we have 3 categories. We have what we call the menstrual regulation. The menstrual regulation consists of aspiration of the uterine content, 4 to 6 days of a missed period. That is, you are supposed to see your period on 15, 16, you don't see 17, you don't see 18, you don't see, and you know that you have had intercourse, and you are thinking, okay, you'll be pregnant. Then what you do is done is what we call menstrual regulation, so that every will be used to aspirate the uterine content so that the menses will come. Then you also have what is called induction of menstruation. This is also based on the fact that you cannot see your period, and pregnancy tests will not be able to confirm whether you are pregnant or not. But then you are thinking, hey, you are likely to be pregnant. So what is done is a prostaglandin, another hormone, is introduced to the uterine cavity. And within a few minutes, it will start acting on the uterus and then it will start menstruation. And then the biggest of them is the post-conceptional method is the abortion. That's termination of the pregnancy. You have done pregnancy test and it's positive and you don't want the pregnancy. What you do then is abortion. When you look at the 3 of them, they are all abortion. Now, the birth control vaccine, the research is still ongoing for that. They have not come up with the birth control vaccine. Just like you see vaccine for polio, vaccine for malaria, hepatitis, there are still research that's ongoing. Then we have what is known as the terminal methods. Terminal methods are sometimes also called the permanent methods. We have the male sterilization, where the male provides difference will be cut and ligated so that when you are having intercourse, sperm will not be released to the female genital tract. We also have the female sterilization, where the fallopian tube. As I said before, when the woman ovulates, it produces an egg. The egg will now enter the fallopian tube because it comes into the uterus. So what they do in female sterilization is to cut the fallopian tube and tie it so that no matter the number of eggs you produce, you are not likely to get pregnant. Now, what is the Islamic perspective on childbirth? The institution of marriage and they want to have children was the custom of the best of creation, that Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet, and the messenger that were chosen by Allah. Allah says about them in Surah Al-Ayat, verse 38, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلًا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَذُرِّيَّةً. And indeed we sent messengers before you and made for them wives and offspring. So these prophets and messengers are the people whom Muslims should look to emulate. Allah says in Surah Al-Ayat, verse 90, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ فَبِهُدَاهُمْ اقْتَدِوا. They are those whom Allah has guided, so follow their guidance. Islam has forbidden celibacy, that is the state of not being married, monasticism, that is the life of monks and nuns, and castration, that is the removal of the male gland for such purposes. The Prophet ﷺ made this clear when he told those companions who were considering ascetic forms of life. He told them, I pray and I sleep, I fast and I take my fast, and I marry women. Whoever turns away from my way of life is not from me. So the Prophet ﷺ not only encouraged marriage, but he encouraged marrying those women who are childbearing. It's important to have said, marry the loving, childbearing women, for I shall have the largest numbers among the prophets on the day of resurrection. From the Islamic perspective, children are a gift and a blessing from Allah. Allah mentions some of the bounties that He has bestowed upon mankind in the verse in Surah Al-Nahl, verse 72. Allah says, وَاللَّهُ جَعَلَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَجَعَلَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَزْوَاجِكُمْ بَنِينَ وَحَفَدًا وَرَزَقَكُمْ مِنْ طَيِّبَاتٍ. Allah says, and Allah has made for you spouses of your own kind, and has made for you from your wives sons and grandsons, and has bestowed upon you good provisions. The only true provider for all mankind is Allah. If Muslims follow what Allah has prescribed for them, Allah will provide for them. Allah has warned against killing one's children out of fear of poverty for either parents or the child. Allah says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ. Kill all your children because of poverty. We provide sustenance for you and for them. And also said in Surah Al-Isra, verse 31, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ أَخْلَةً إِمْلَاقٍ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ إِنَّ قَتْلَهُمْ كَانَ خِطْيًا كَبِيرًا. And kill not your children for fear of poverty. We shall provide for them as well as for you. Surely the killing of them is a great sin. As Muslims should never want to abort or kill their children out of fear of poverty. It is Allah who provides for them. Now, what are the views of the Islamic scholars on the various birth control methods? To understand Islamic jurisprudence point of view on birth control methods, we need to understand the basic framework for such jurisprudence. First and foremost, the basic text providing guidelines on all Islamic matters is the Quran, the revealed word of Allah. But the Quran, which provides a rich variety of specific rules and general principles, does not explicitly address every possible situation that may face a Muslim. Some cases not explicitly addressed therein. Muslims look to the examples and sayings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that is the Sunnah, as secondary source of guidance. Often, that too leaves open some questions of interpretation or application. In such cases, Muslims rely on ijtihad, which is the ability to analyze Quranic text or a problematic situation within the relevant cultural and historical context, and then devise an appropriate interpretation or solution based on a thorough understanding of Quranic principles and the Sunnah. This approach results in a highly flexible jurisprudence. This flexibility has its limitations. It does not extend to the most fundamental tenets of Islam, such as the belief in the unity of Allah. Among the fundamental principles of ijtihad are the following: 1. Laws change with changes in time and place. 2. Choosing the lesser of two evils. And 3. Preserving public interest. So in discussing issues of birth control methods, it is important to keep all these principles and the basic legal framework in mind. Now, we are going to look briefly at 3 of the methods that are enumerated. We look at the coitus interruptus, that is lower. We look at abortion, and then we look at sterilization. Now, the coitus interruptus, which I said before, is withdrawal during intercourse before ejaculation. Majority of the scholars support the use of coitus interruptus or an asli for the purpose of birth control. The Prophet said that some of his companions, including his cousin Ali, practiced an asli coitus interruptus, and yet he did not prohibit the practice. He also told his companions that if God wanted to create a human life, God would do so anyway, whether they practice an asli or not. Ibn Hazm, who lived in Spain in the 10th century, represented a minority view on al-asli, He adopts an extremely restrictive position, arguing that it's a form of eating infanticide and is not prohibited by the Quran. His argument is based on the report by Ghana, a woman who heard the Prophet refer to her as eating infanticide. Imam Ghazali and many others treat the same report differently, focusing on the fact that a fetus does not become a living being until it reaches a certain stage of development. And Ghazali concludes that the reported saying indicates karahiyya, that is, meaning disfavor and not prohibition. In doing so, he relied in part on the Sahaba, that Ali's rejection of the description of Al-Azli as a minor infanticide. Recently, some Muslim scholars have returned to Ibn Azli's minority view. Part of the reason they rooted is their concern for the Muslim Ummah, whom they feel has become the intended target of population control propaganda by the West. Then the other one they want to talk about is abortion. Majority of Muslim scholars permit abortion, although they differ on the stage of fetal development, the one beyond which it becomes prohibited. To understand the differences in their position, we have to first study what the Quran says about this matter. Surah Al-Mu'min verses 12 to 14 says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُطْفَةً فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسرنا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين. Also, there is also another hadith of the Prophet that has also put more perspective into this. When Prophet says that when the Imam's fertilization takes place, after fertilization it turns to this, after every 40 days, then after the 28th day, then the soul is now rooted into it. So this verse says that indeed we created man out of essence of clay, then we placed him as a garment in the safe place of rest. Then we created out of the garment a clinging mass, and out of the clinging mass we created an embryo. Then we created within the embryo bones. Then we clothed the bones with flesh. Then we bring this into being as another creation. Exalted be God, the best of creators. So the scholars say that based on the fact that it is only after the khalaq al-akhar is formed, that when the soul is not driven into the embryo or to whatever is formed, then anything that is done before the 120 days is allowed. This can be summarized as follows: the semen develops into the womb together with the ovum into a clinging cord, then a shoe long mudda, then complete itself, yet incomplete. Another act of creation takes place, that's the khalaq al-akhar. At this last stage of khalaq al-akhar, and so when it takes place. That is, at the stage of khalaq al-akhar, that the soul is now divided into whatever is formed. That's why you cannot see a human being as come into being. So the scholars agree that abortion at or after the ensoulment stage is prohibited, except to protect the mother's life. They disagree, however, on when this stage is reached and whether abortion at even an early stage is permitted. One group permits abortion up to 120 days, another prohibits it as early as 80 or even 40 days after conception. In either case, many take the view that abortion does not abruptly become prohibited at a starting stage, whether start stage is reached at ensoulment or earlier. Rather, abortion becomes increasingly makruh as the fetus develops until it becomes finally prohibited. On the other hand, the minority of scholars hold a very strict view which prohibits abortion the minute the semen attaches to the uterus, on the theory that it is already on its way to being ensouled. These scholars also view abortions performed at later stages of pregnancy as yet more serious than those performed at earlier stages. This position was adopted recently by some Muslim jurists who relied on scientific evidence in reaching their conclusion, while saluting the various efforts of early Muslim jurists on the subject. They concluded, from a review of contemporary medical and scientific advances, that an embryo is a living organism from the moment of conception. So, of course, all these views permit abortion for exigencies, such as saving the mother's life, even after ensoding. So, if the life of the woman is at stake, then we are allowed to perform abortion. This case that usually comes to mind is when we have malpositioning of the placenta. The placenta, when the woman is pregnant, is very supposed to be at the upper part of the uterus. But for some unknown reason, to be at the opening of the uterus. And by the time the pregnancy starts getting to 4 months, 5 months, the woman will start bleeding. And if the baby is not terminated, the woman may lose her life. So if that's such a case that the woman may likely die as a result of being pregnant, then whatever the age of the pregnancy is allowed to terminate the pregnancy. All scholars of Islam agree on that. Then sterilization. Sterilization, as I said, is a permanent method. As once you do it, then you can't reverse it. Once you have sterilized yourself, then you cannot reverse it again. So preventing pregnancy by surgery is known as sterilization, which can be performed for either the husband or the wife. It is perhaps more accurate to say that we cannot make a general sweeping statement in order to say that such an operation is either forbidden or permissible. Any surgery may be considered from a strictly religious point of view as required, recommended, discouraged, or forbidden according to the different circumstances of each person. If a highly competent doctor advises his patient that a certain operation will not only cure his illness but also prevent a speedy deterioration of his case, which is otherwise inevitable, then we can say that the operation is recommended. On the other hand, if there is no strong medical grounds for operating on a certain patient, but the doctor advises the operation only to get his fee, then the doctor commits a sin by giving such an advice. So in conclusion, based on the above points and numerous others, the scholars came up with the following resolution. It is not allowed to enact a general law that limits the freedom of spouses in having children. 2. It is forbidden to permanently end a man's or a woman's ability to produce children, such as by having hysterectomy or vasectomy, as long as that is not called for by circumstances of necessity according to his Islamic flavor. 3. It is permissible to control the timing of birth with the intent of spacing the occurrences of pregnancy or delay it for a specific amount of time if there is a Sharia need for that in the opinion of the spouses, based on mutual consultation and agreement between them. However, this is conditioned by that not leading to any harm by its being done by means that are approved in the Sharia. So based on that, I conclude this presentation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I want to request for something from the management that there's this issue, CS. There's so many unclear issues that have been surrounding these CS. So maybe the management could invite our doctor in another time to come and give us a very clear
what is CS?
CS. Yes. So the question that I want to ask on these CS is that, doctor, what are the factors that used to lead to these CS, and is there any preventive measure against it? Assalamu alaikum.
Well, from the presentation of doctor, I have this impression that some of our Muslim brothers and sisters, it appears that there's a confusion among them with respect to proper understanding of what we can refer to as proper abortion, and of course process of a child spacing. It is because I can see that the abortion, you had mentioned during the lecture that we can define a process as an abortion if the fetus is actually over 120 days. But there's this general feeling among the people that when you talk about family planning, the understanding that people have is that child control, the Islam is totally against it. And I have this feeling that probably what is causing this confusion is that when you talk about child spacing, people misunderstand it with the outright abortion. That's an observation. I want a clarification over that. The question proper is that can we refer to as some of the measures that you mentioned, for instance, sterilization and the tying of a fallopian tube? Can we refer to them as an extreme measure of, whether abortion or child spacing? Salam alaikum.
I've not heard that family planning is around and that it is not Islamic, whatever the method is. Sorry. So I want to be sure if truly is halal, is not around. Then my second question is that if truly is halal, which of the methods is best for women? Because of all the methods you explained, I saw that all the methods have side effects. There's not one that you distinguish that is best for women. So does it really mean that it's around, not around?
Yeah, thank you very much, lecturer. Yeah, my question is one. You did not mention the side effect of this patch of the chip one. And another thing is that I think this issue is a very, very serious one that we need a lot of enlightenment. Maybe the organization will come up with more enlightenment. In fact, to be precise, I was in this kind of dilemma about some months ago, which after I went to Google searching which is, acceptable, that is Islamic compliance. After all these, I had to, come down to the fact that the Prophet said, so I have to rest my case, and alhamdulillah, the boy is now Muhammad, is born.
Now, I want to ask Abdul lecturer on the effect of fascination on our people. In those days, our father used to marry 4, 5, 10 wives, and you were all born. But nowadays, when you look at us from 40 years down, maybe as a result of fascination, we have many issues of barrenness here and there. Please, is it not